Hey lambs, Kai here. Welcome to your midweek episode. Today we're going to talk about a former Army captain who went to jail for ambush shooting and murdering someone. Before we begin, I want to welcome anyone who is new here. My name is Kai and this is Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide, the Wednesday edition. Also, I want to remind you that this episode and all my episodes are sponsored by my lambs in Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. If you want to be a sponsor of Love and Murder and get bonus episodes extras, and so much more, then subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. I look forward to seeing you over there. Now let's get into this Midweek Wednesday. On May 12, 2020, police in Killeen, Texas responded to the 2200 block of Andover Drive in response to a shooting victim. When police arrived, they found a man had been shot in the chest. While police were investigating the scene, another man brought a 9mm handgun to the scene with him. When police confiscated that gun because, why would you come there? You saw the flash in blues and red. Why would you come there with a gun? They found that this was the same gun that was used in the shooting. When police questioned the man, he said that he got this from Copperas Cove resident, former Army Captain Adrianna Veal, who was 30 years old, had broken into the victim's apartment, waited for him, shot him, and then hit him in the head with a hammer because her gun had malfunctioned. So she had shot him once and she went to shoot him again, but the gun malfunctioned. And instead of that making her come to her senses, she grabbed a hammer and started beating him in the head with it. Police on the scene said, quote, 2 spent gun shell casings had been found and a blood trail throughout the apartment as well. Adrianna was arrested on May 13th, which is the next day, and held in the Bell County Jail. She was indicted on July 1st, 2020 on charges of aggravated assault of a family or household member with a deadly weapon and burglary of habitation with intent to commit assault. She was also discharged from the Army on June 30th, 2021, in which she held the rank of captain. So with everything going on, her discharge was a dishonorable discharge, which is something you do not want to have on your record. On November 2nd, 2021, she did plead guilty to all charges. And during the hearing, which was presided over by Judge Steve Dusky, he heard from the victim, whose name was Timothy Custer, who is a Chief Warrant Officer in the Army. He said that Adrianna was about to be promoted to the rank of Major at the time and had been his girlfriend for less than a year. Quote, I admired that she was a strong, independent woman and she is very driven and she was sweet when we first started dating. She was honest. The relationship had been on and off by this time for several months, so it's not like they were really, really steady. But he said he had never given her keys to his apartment. However, on that May 12th, when he came home, he went into his bedroom and was shocked to find Adrianna hiding in his closet. So he surmised that she had to have stolen his keys, which included a key to the cable lock on his handgun. He said that, without saying a word, Adrianna lifted up the handgun, pointed it at him, and shot him point blank in the chest. Then he heard the gun jam when she tried to fire it again, and that allowed him to get control of the gun. So when he got the gun away from her, that's when she grabbed the hammer and hit him multiple times in his skull and face and then ran away. Testimony went on to say that Adrianna called her friend R. Chavez after the shooting and asked him to come pick her up. Chavez went to pick her up and she told him exactly what had happened. She said, I broke into Timothy's apartment, I shot him and I hit him with a hammer. And instead of, completely pulling over to the side of the road and saying, get the hell out of my truck, he continued driving and dropped her off at her house so that she can call the MP, which is the military police. Then he went and reported the shooting to the Bell County Sheriff's Office. So I guess, you know what? I take back that little clowning that he did. He did the right thing. Keep your cool, make them think you're on your side, drop them off, hear all of that, then haul ass to the police station. So he did the right thing. Officer Jay Mueller is the one who took the call, did the investigation, and he was the one who arrested Adrianna on the day of the shooting. The prosecution also asked Chavez about some text messages exchanged between him and Adrianna did object over that. However, the judge overruled that objection. So they brought out printed messages of the exchange between him and Adrianna to try and help his recollections about the events. And he said that about a month before the shooting, he did have a text exchange with Adrianna where she texted him, quote, "Do you ever feel like you have to hurt someone?" He admitted that they did discuss comic book characters and the Purge movie in the same conversation, but he didn't take this conversation seriously. It's like, somebody asking you, I don't know, which one would you fight, a bear or a lion? It's just, a conversation that you have. If you're not insanely crazy, you more than likely won't think the person is completely out of their mind enough to go figure out which one would they fight, a bear or a lion. Same thing as if somebody says, you know what? My son actually gets on my nerves. I'm going to get rid of him. It's like, you're not going to take that seriously. Only really insane people would say this and take it seriously. And several days before the shooting, the text exchange between Adrianna and Chavez was saying that she was fighting with the person she was dating. She told Chavez that she had tried to push the laptop off of his lap and he grabbed it, which made her, quote, attack him, which made things worse. And she texted Chavez that she was sick of the games and that they were, quote, going to work through their issues or they were both dying tonight, end quote. Then a day or two before the shooting, Adrianna again texted Chavez and asked him to borrow his Glock handgun. The prosecution then pointed out that this was not the first time that Adrianna had asked Chavez to borrow her Glock, because she did the same thing several months before the shooting. And she was also talking to him and telling him that she wanted to buy one and wanted to practice with it. Then in another testimony, the court heard that Adrianna had told police that Timothy had been sexually and physically abusive with her. However, when the Killeen Police Department investigated these accusations, they found there was no merit to it and no charges had been filed. To which Timothy responded that, quote, even though it's over on the civilian side, meaning that, like you said, the Killeen PD didn't find anything stating that he had sexually or physically abused her. So it was over with the civilian side, but the MPs still had the case open for him. Quote, there is a stigma attached and I can't progress in my career. Even when it's false, it still sticks. So basically with these false allegations, she ruined his career. Now the attorneys went on to speak for their clients, and defense attorney Steve Blythe told the court that Adrianna, who is highly educated and has no prior arrest or criminal convictions, should be given a chance at completing a long-term deferred probation or a short prison term. Okay, but my thing is, okay, she's educated, she has no prior convictions or arrests. That just means she hasn't been caught in all her crazy. Nobody called the cops on her. But literally, she just shot a man cold-bloodedly in the chest and beat him in the face with a hammer. And you want either probation or a short prison term because she went to school? Seriously? Quote, based on her personal history, if you take out the 3 or 4 minutes on May 12th, if you take out that time she shot somebody in the chest and bust him in the head with a hammer, but if you take that out, all in all, she's a great person. A+, you'd want this woman to marry your son, I guarantee. What? Anyway, they go on to say, quote, based on her personal history, if you take out the 3 or 4 minutes on May 12, 2020, I have no doubt that she could successfully complete a probation. The court cannot ignore the life that Ms. Veal has led up to May 12, 2020, and since then. She has family in Florida who are waiting for her to come home. Give her a chance to continue her life as a useful and productive citizen. She is not a threat to society in general. I guess just a threat to Timothy, maybe? The state prosecutor argued that Adrianna deserves life in prison. Bump all that probation bullshit, short-term prison. She needs to spend her life in prison. Quote, the victim has dedicated his life to serve in the United States of America, including multiple tours overseas in service to our country. Then he comes home to be ambushed, shot, and beaten with a hammer. Then he was falsely accused of being a sex offender. Adrianna Veal is no different than any other family violence defendant we see. This was a meticulous, premeditated assault that has caused the lifelong physical and mental injuries to the victim. And this was said by the state prosecutor, attorney James Winters. So in February 2022, Judge Dusky had the task of deciding whether Adrianna should get life in prison or probation. And after hearing testimony from 3 other witnesses, including 2 Killeen PD officers and a psychologist who evaluated Adrianna, Judge Dusky sentenced Adrianna to 40 years in prison on 2 first-degree felony charges. I mean, I guess he split the difference. Not life, not probation, but 40 years in prison. So she'll be about 70 by the time she gets out. So that's basically life. On August 31st, 2023, of course she did, Adrianna issued an appeal stating that she didn't give permission for investigators to have her phone for as long as they did and to throw out the case and go for a new trial. Ma'am, I'm not sure if you heard what you did, but let me reiterate your charges. Let me just go through this. Adrianna Jean Veal broke into the victim's apartment, waited for him, shot him, and then hit him in the head with a hammer when the gun malfunctioned. And you're worried about them having your phone and going through your text messages, and you didn't tell them they could have your phone for that long, and that's your appeal? So the judge said, look, let me tell you as it is, Adrianna. Basically, we had your phone for the amount of time we were supposed to have your phone. Maybe if you didn't break into your boyfriend or ex-boyfriend's house, shot him, and then beat him in the head, maybe we wouldn't have had your phone. Did you ever think about that? He didn't really say that, but you know. And they said, nope, we uphold your 40 years in prison. Please go back and rot in your cell. And that was it. And that is the case of this crazy woman who I'm going to call it premeditated attempted murder because she broke in and sat there waiting. They didn't even say how long she sat there waiting. She could have been waiting there for 6 hours. She sat there waiting in this dude's closet for him to come home. And it didn't say what happened to Chavez, but I'm pretty sure nothing happened to him because he didn't help in the murder. Even if she did ask him to borrow his Glock and he did give it to her, she didn't say, hey, can you let me borrow your Glock so I can shoot my ex in his chest? She didn't say any of that. She just asked for it. And, all the conversations they had was just conversations. Now, on top of all of that, when he did find out what happened, he immediately went to the police. So I don't think anything really happened to him. And that is the crazy case of Adrianna Veal, somebody who was about to be promoted in the military and decided to screw up her entire career because, I don't know, you were crazy in love with somebody? Seriously? And also I found the 2 appeal forms because I guess she did 2 separate appeals. And I do have the entire appeal form in our Patreon, so you could read through that entire appeal form. So just go to patreon.com/love and murder, join, and one of the case extras for today's case is you get the appeal forms. Don't forget to join my brand new WhatsApp group. It is secure. Nobody sees your phone number, but you get to get extras from Love and Murder, which is some cases that I see online that I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to do a rant about. It's just stuff that I saw that I thought was very interesting or shocking, really. And I do put it in my new WhatsApp group, murderandlove.com/WhatsApp, murderandlove.com/WhatsApp. Just go ahead and join the WhatsApp group. So I did tell y'all yesterday that I was going to read this week's True Crime Tuesday and Wednesday comments in one episode. So let me get those comments and we'll see what y'all had to say. Christina Bobo says, making a post. So basically this last week, I wasn't even in the Facebook group either, the Love and Murder Beyond the Podcast Facebook group. So Christina just made a post because usually I go in there, I add the episode and I ask the poll question. But last week I didn't do it. So Christina Bobo made her own post, which thank you so much. Good looking out. She said, mental health was an excuse, not a factor in Holly's slaying and cover up. I'm glad the court saw through that because it's a wave people sail to freedom when they should be on the bus ride to prison. The desire to want a mental health issue should be a mental health issue in itself. I totally understand what you said on this episode. Anyone who says otherwise is either reaching or are not on social media enough to see that mental illness has become the latest rave. Lately, I've been questioning my own mental health based on the things I've heard circulating, attributing common characteristics as sign of mental illness. Reminds me of the Cheshire Cat when he says, we're all mad here. Side note, people make me sick because to some, it's becoming something to low-key boast about. Meanwhile, many are suffering in silence because they're afraid some will see them as attention-seeking, so their issue won't be taken seriously. And I did answer her. I told her I'm glad she understands where I'm coming from. And I'm also glad that the judge saw through what the lawyers were trying to say, like, oh, it's his mental health and everything like that. Like, for real, blaming ADHD on a reason to help somebody bury a body is like, ADHD, really? That's your mental illness that you wanted to produce to the court to show that, well, you know, this is why when he said, help me bury the body, that's why he went through with it, because he has ADHD. Like, sir, do you know what ADHD means, or are you just throwing stuff out there hoping it sticks to the wall? Like, what? And then I went on to talk a little bit about my current issue that I found out about myself. So if you want to read that, that is in the Love and Murder Beyond the Podcast group on Facebook. Then Christina Boba went on to talk about the Wednesday episode in which the woman with mental health issues drank herself to death. If you haven't listened to that, listen to it. This woman overhydrated herself. So she said, Lily was in a place where she should have been most protected. She was failed and someone should be held accountable. How did she even get access to that amount of water? The manager came across as flippant. Someone lost their life on her watch and she's like, well, we were understaffed. Better luck next time, which I agree. Like, she really didn't. She was just like, oh, we didn't have the nurse there. You had you there. You were literally supposed to be checking on her every 15 minutes. Like, I understand being understaffed. That's nothing that you have control over, but you do have control over looking at someone who is on a new medication and making sure that it's not adversely affecting them. She goes on to say, regarding this week's True Crime Tuesday episode, I used to work at a group home. Once a male client attacked a female coworker at the mall. A man saw this, jumped in, and began to pounce on the client, unaware that the person was suffering from mental illness. It was a terrible day for everyone involved. I know the goal is to have everyone fit into a society, so it's frowned upon to label people, but people with mental health issues should have medical alert bracelets similar to what people with allergies wear. This would help others to understand when they see them in an episode that they aren't on drugs, but in the middle of a crisis. Also, I agree that the people are not mental health professionals, but that we should still have them on standby to assist trained mental health professionals. Your idea to have an added line while streamline the calls and make sure we get the right people to the right places. I believe this was pitched in the idea to defund the police. Not every person outside their mind is high on drugs, and they shouldn't be treated as criminals. Shame on Mississippi. Not surprised, but utterly disgusted by their approach or lack thereof to how mental health professionals are treated. Right. And that was my thing. I know police cannot be responsible for everything under the sun. They're only one department. And even those people in the department are they're only people. That's why you don't expect police to be responsible for fires, for instance. You don't expect police to be responsible for natural disasters, for instance. Well, some people still call police if an earthquake happens, which I don't understand. But police are not supposed to be responsible for everything. We should have a mental health line, and attached to that mental health hotline, the police should come out as well to support the mental health professionals. This is just what I think. And that is all I have for you for today's Midweek Wednesday. I'm going to put out the poll. The poll that I'm going to put out is, if it were to go this way, which lawyer would you have agreed upon? Would you have agreed with her defense lawyer that she only deserved probation based on her background? Or do you agree with the prosecution that she should have spent life in prison based on her crime? So that is going to be the poll question that I have out for you. You can find the poll question on Spotify, or you could find it in our brand new WhatsApp group, murderandlove.com/WhatsApp. I can't wait to see you in the WhatsApp group, murderandlove.com/WhatsApp. That's all I have for you today, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.